In 2014, an emergency dispatcher in South Korea received a distress call from a child aboard a sinking passenger ferry. As the vessel tilted into the ocean, the captain ordered the passengers to stay put in their cabins, then fled the scene. 300 passengers drowned. Most were high school students on a class trip, leaving the nation to watch helplessly as the disaster unfolded. While the crew was initially blamed for incompetence, investigators soon uncovered a structural cause. The ferry was operating at more than twice its legal weight limit, having been illegally modified to carry extra cargo and a marble art gallery. The vessel was owned by the Yu family. To increase their profit, they bypassed basic safety regulations and packed the ship with as much weight as possible. This tragedy shattered the public's trust. South Koreans saw that their safety was secondary to the financial interests of powerful corporate dynasties. Following the sinking, the government launched the largest manhunt in South Korean history to arrest the elusive patriarch of the Yu family. He evaded thousands of police officers for weeks until a farmer found his body in an orchard. The Yus were a smaller player in a system dominated by chaebols, family-run corporate empires. The entitlement of these families often spills into public view, most famously in 2014, when a Korean Air vice president forced a passenger plane back to the gate because she was served macadamia nuts in a bag instead of on a plate. Despite international backlash and a potential 15-year prison sentence, a judge reduced her penalty. She served only 5 months. These families repeatedly dodge responsibility for crimes while continuing to amass wealth. It raises a glaring question. How did a handful of elite families become so powerful that they function above the law in a modern society? After the Korean War ended in the 1950s, South Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world, lacking functional infrastructure and capital. The country's military dictators jump-started the economy with a highly concentrated strategy. The government handed exclusive capital and resources to a select few family businesses, directing them to rebuild the nation's key industries. In just a few decades, companies like Samsung and Hyundai turned a ruined nation into a global industrial powerhouse, today the 14th largest economy in the world. Flush with support, these families diversified into tech, finance, and manufacturing. They built complex corporate structures to consolidate control. By organizing these empires into networks of subsidiaries, they created a system that obscures who's actually in charge, shielding founders from liability for corporate crimes. The economic engine designed to save South Korea succeeded, but it permanently hardwired monopoly power into the state. This history created a system of cozy corruption. The government provides the chaebols with subsidies and tax incentives, while political leaders rely on the family's wealth and influence to stay in power. Tying a nation's fate to a few companies creates massive vulnerabilities. During the 1997 Asian financial crisis, 13 of the top 30 chaebols went technically bankrupt, nearly collapsing the entire economy. This complicity leads to direct harm. In the Chaebol investigation, auditors found that Coast Guard officials ignored the ferry's safety problems after being courted by the shipping company at lavish dinners. The public realized the government was no longer regulating the monopolies, it was actively protecting them at the expense of its own citizens. In 2016, years of unchecked abuse led to massive weekly protests. Millions of South Koreans took to the streets in candlelight vigils to demand accountability. Their target was President Park Geun-hye, who was caught in a web of backroom deals with corporate executives. Park accepted $36 million in bribes in exchange for government favors. In return, she greenlit a controversial merger that gave Samsung's crown prince, Lee Jae-young, even more control over the country's most powerful chaebol. Following the scandal, President Park was impeached and imprisoned, while Lee Jae-young was arrested and sentenced to jail. For a brief, optimistic moment, it appeared to the nation that the public will had finally shattered the untouchable chaebol shield. But the system proved difficult to curb. Despite his promises of reform, the next president, Moon Jae-in, pardoned Lee Jae-young after just 1 year. The pardon was based on a cold economic reality. Because Samsung is responsible for such a significant portion of South Korea's GDP, the government argued the nation needed its leader free to prevent an economic downturn. Most of the public agreed. Despite their anger over corruption, a 2022 poll showed that 70% of South Koreans approved of the pardon, fearing the consequences of a weakened Samsung. This creates a unique paradox. The citizens who protest Chaebol abuses desperately scramble for the 200,000 top-paying jobs these companies offer every year. Today, South Korea is a hostage economy. These family empires maintain their power because they have successfully made their own survival indistinguishable from the survival of the nation itself.